Here we are, and welcome everyone to day one of the Connecting the Dots 4-day online series. I'm so excited to have you all with us. I'm Markera Featherstrong, and I'm a life coach specializing in love, self-love, friendship love, relationship love, you name it. In my experience, I've had to help clients make the connection between what they witness happening in love relationships in their own home and how that affected their self-confidence and the manner in which they function in their own love relationships. When I help them make this connection and dig deeper into it, they are able to dissect and understand why they are often stuck in the loop of same relationship, different person. This allows them to recognize what they know, release what doesn't serve, and reset to move forward to create better love experiences. Today, I have Betsy Schwartz with us. I met Betsy some years back on my quest to become a postpartum doula. The way she imparts information and includes you in the process is a comforting and inviting experience. Betsy is a spirited entrepreneur, a postpartum doula trainer, and Reiki master practitioner. She is passionate about sharing wisdom and healing, helping others to heal from the inside out. She loves to practice the drums, swim, and play mahjong, and practice with her dragging boat team. Being with people, having fun, and truly connecting lights Betsy's spirit up. She envisions a world of love and always strives to be the love and the light the world so desperately needs. Hey, Betsy, welcome to Connecting the Dots. How are you?
Good. Hey, were you talking about me? Yeah, that was me, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I know, I think it's so cool how we met all those years ago. Well, we didn't really meet, but we've been connected. I was supposed to come to where you live and do a training, or we tried to get that set up, and we've connected and reconnected over the years. So
Yes.
I love that, right? That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, so where to begin, right? Do you have a leading question or?
So tell us a bit more about yourself, what you do, and how you do it. So what you do, why you do it, and how.
Hi, sorry everyone. What do I do? Why do I do it? Well, why? I guess I might start with why. I just, so I've had two of my own children, and I've learned a lot as a doula, as a postpartum doula, as a Reiki master practitioner. And I truly believe the beginning of all relationship starts in the womb, actually. So it's not even when a baby's born. Our first environment is in the womb. And as a baby, and even though we don't know it consciously, we are experiencing everything that our parents or caregivers are experiencing while we're in the womb, especially our mothers who are carrying us. Every cell is recording everything. And when we can grasp that, and it's not always easily grasped, but there's a lot of research, so it's a true fact. But when we can grasp that concept, that idea, that reality, so much opens up in terms of what we know. When you look at, I know you're working with adults, correct? All right,
And
so,
a few teens.
Excuse me?
And a few teens.
Okay, so, but well, grown-ups, I mean, they're not babies and children, right? So, but what you're seeing is what's playing out from that womb to 7 recording, whether it's been imprinted in the cells or babies and children have seen it with their parents, whatever has been witnessed and experienced by the baby from the womb and beyond. I'd like to say even before that, but I won't get into that right now. But all of that is with that child and then with that adult. And they might not even be consciously aware of it, which is when you, I think, maybe step in, right?
Yes.
To support like what's happening. Why when we develop relationships as a teen or an adult, we oftentimes play out our parents' relationship that may or may not have been what we would think is ideal, or we're looking for love, and really the love is within, and the first love is with ourselves. But we find ourselves, I mean, I did this when I was teens and 20s. I'm gonna find it over there, and he's over there, he's up, right? You go, yeah. And it's right here. And when we can learn that, and then again, maybe even learn a little bit about what our life was like in the womb, ask if we can ask our mothers, you know, what that was like for them, it might shed some light, possibly, right?
Well, I find it interesting because you're confirming a lot of things I realized myself. I've worked with a life coach, and she uncovered some things for me as well that were like, oh, well, I noticed that the way I operate in relationships was similar to my mother, where it was just, you got me for life through whatever. And one day I decided that's not working. So I had to like step back and be like, no, I'm not doing this to the detriment of myself, because I saw the effects the toll it took on her. And then it made me also look at my pregnancy with my son that was really tumultuous. And he had colic, but nobody made the connection between the constant arguing I had in my marriage, being pregnant, trying to figure things out, and him being a colicky baby when he came along. And now as a teen, he's got some anxiety issues, and he's sort of trying to figure out what he thinks about relationships. And it all plays back to me like, there has to be this deeper connection, that it's just not what we saw growing up, but there's something that starts from pregnancy that stirs within the baby to be like, this is the world I'm coming into, and this is how people function, and this is what we do in certain situations. And so I'm like, well, maybe if I, ask you about it, you'd be able to shed more light on it. And you're confirming a lot of things that I started to piece together.
Yeah, so it's true, because what happens in the womb is, of course, you've got a developing baby, developing cells, you've got the brain developing. And how I've heard it stated by researchers and people that have spent their life in this work with the womb psychology is that the brain develops one way or another. And of course, it continues to develop rapidly right from birth, all the synapses, everything wiring together. So what happens is sometimes there's more of that hindbrain and there's more of that fight or flight. I don't know how to put it, but you can be in one way of being or another way of being, more relaxed and less anxious, or you can be hyper vigilant and anxious. And a lot of that has to do, like you said, the fighting. I had my first son also. I was not in a good marriage. I was actually deserted at 7 months pregnant. And it was a lifetime ago. So it was really, but I think about how stressed I was, and, my lack of sleep and everything that was going on while he was developing. And it's a no surprise. And he's now 32 and he struggles with addiction. He's had rage. There's been a lot. Now, I want to back up a little, because I spent a lot of time feeling very guilty and ashamed. And I don't want anybody listening to feel that way, although you might, because really you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And even then you can't go backwards. You move forward, like with your son. Okay, let's address what's happening. Yes, you know a lot now of, maybe that's why that happened and why that is. But it's not our fault. So I just want to share that with listeners, because that's a tough one.
It's very important to
learn. Yeah. So I was just correlating the fact that, yes, I had a similar experience and I see what can happen. And there's so much research on this, and that's a good thing, right? Because we know that the first environment matters, but then there's epigenetics, what happens above and beyond the environment. Just like your genes aren't a definitive, my dad had cancer, which he did. My dad died of cancer at a very young age. Does that mean I'm going to get cancer? No. Could I? Yeah, probably. But that was what happened after, how he took care of himself or didn't, right? Or like the foods you eat, what you listen to, what you consume. So you've got this foundation from the womb and beyond in your early parenting when you were a child, but that doesn't mean that you can't change it up. And I think that's important.
Yes, I think that's what makes my work so interesting, because once I help people make that connection, because I remember the feeling I had, like this light bulb went off and it was like, oh, and then you try to figure out, well, what do I do now? And it's like, this is where you step into your power as who you are, and you go, I can actually control what happens and I can change the outcome. When I got married, I thought, well, this is for life, and whatever I'm going through, I'm stuck with, until one day I'm like, this isn't working. And I had to give myself permission, which is something I don't think people realize that they can do. I had to give myself permission to walk away from it and start over and redefine who I was and what I wanted. Now, it didn't mean that things turned out great afterwards, because I got into an even more dysfunctional relationship right after. But what it did was, I was able to cut that relationship, and half the time it took for me to cut my marriage, and I was able to understand how I got there and what it took for me to be like, I'm not doing this again. It's almost like understanding what you don't want in order to define what you want.
Yes.
So I let clients know, like, I break it down for them, and we go through exercises that show them, these are the similarities and this is what you're doing. What are you prepared to do to have a different outcome? Like you said, it doesn't like genetically dispose us to a certain outcome or the same outcome that we've witnessed.
Yeah, exactly. So on that note, two things. One is, and I heard this a long time ago at a parenting workshop, where you say, oh, I don't want to do what my mom did. I'm going to do it all different. I don't want to be like them. And by osmosis, somehow, because of how you were raised, you end up, oh my gosh, I'm being just like my mom or just like my dad. So that does happen. And you can still recognize it and do different.
Well, let me ask you a question. So in the work that you do, the experience you've had as a postpartum doula, are there any situations where you see, even with new parents, the impact that having a child can have on them and how they can navigate that experience and keep their relationship intact? Because having a baby is like a head against windshield impact, no matter how prepared you feel. So that does have some,
good way to put it.
It has effect on your as a lover and a mate.
Yes.
As you try to navigate being a nurturer and a caregiver.
Right. So that's a great question. And oh gosh, I do know someone this is her life's work, actually. Her name is Ellie Taylor, and she wrote the book Becoming Us. I think she just did a new version. So she focuses on that very thing. But what I can say is, I believe that, yes, when you have a baby, your life is not the same. No doubt. You've got to shift gears, right? And you're so focused on this little being to raise and take care of. And if you're lucky enough to have a partner and a mate, that you've been with, it's so important to nurture that in some way and to continue to communicate. And I think just to express how you're feeling, because becoming a dad, becoming a mom, becoming a parent, it's different for everyone, right? And what's happening oftentimes is that stuff's coming up about how you were raised and how you don't want to do the same thing. And maybe if you're like I was, it was never discussed until we were in it. We didn't discuss before we had a child, like what we were going to do. The second time, a little more so, but not fully, right? The first time I was alone, so I can't really speak into that part. But the second one, I didn't really know. And so stuff comes up. So I think it's important to communicate, really, and to communicate even when they're little babies about, well, how would you handle this? As they grow so fast, how are you going to handle the discipline and the boundaries and just a lot of it, which I know it's hard to think about when they're little bitty babies because there's so much going on. But even if you can talk about it beforehand, I think it's just good to know, like, how were you raised? Your mother did that to you? Oh, my husband was chased with a belt. and he'd smash his head on the window because he'd be running away, right? I'm just saying, it was in the 50s. My situation was very different. So how do you blend that together, right?
Right.
And I only have my experience to share, but I think new parents get to communicate. They get to find time to spend together. Even if the baby's sleeping and they're in the living room, they don't have to go out and go do anything, right? Because they do have a little baby. But spend some time where they can just hang out and share what's happening.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah, I can speak to that overwhelming part, because having a 4-year-old and parenting with someone who's more communicative, who is more open to understanding his history and how we're going to move forward with this baby, it has interesting. And I find myself making that time to make sure that we don't lose that connection with each other, because there were bumps in the road. That first 3-month period, you're figuring out, and in our culture, a lot of people are like, don't hold the baby all the time, you're gonna spoil them. And he was sort of like on that train. And I'm like, the 3 months are gonna go by in a blink. She's 4 now. We just had her last year and she's already 4.
Yeah.
And so I held her for 3 months. And everyone's like, you still holding this baby? Every time you holding it, she slapped on my chest, and they're like, she's never gonna function. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've given birth 3 times before. I've got 2 other kids to show for certain things that I did. She'll be fine. And she's absolutely fine. She's going along and stepping into her independence. She's not as clingy as everyone worried about her being. And I'm like, that nurturing is important, because I feel like once they know that someone's there for them, they're able to develop confidently. And then they're able to be self-confident. So as adults, they've got that foundation that says, I love myself, and I don't have to look for that love necessarily in a love relationship.
Right. Yeah. And also trusting. It develops trust, trust that your needs will be met. And certainly, getting all that love early on makes a big difference, no matter what might have happened in the beginning, or maybe the birth was less than desirable and maybe traumatic for the baby. There's all that, there's so many factors that come in, whether in the womb, like we were talking about, and then with the birth, especially. I can only speak primarily about the US, but we know that we have a broken maternity care system, and births are not as desirable, as calm as they could be. And there's that. And again, not to have anybody be feeling guilty about anything that happened if it, was a past thing for you. But again, when we know better, we do better. And that's why I continue to teach, educate, share what I know. You never know when you're planting a seed, something could shift. You just don't know. You don't always see immediate results as a postpartum doula with any particular situation. But I always say it's a disservice to withhold information and what you know. What people do with it is that's on them. But obviously, if I had known certain things 20 years ago, things would be different. But it's always that way with life. Because you can't know. Would you think you'd be sitting here with a 4-year-old? Would I be thinking I got a 4-year-old grandson right now from my baby? It's like, no. But that's life, right? But I do think that a lot of times we forget, and this is what I was going to allude to before, the energetics of everything, where if you're finding people in your practice that are attracting that same kind of person or relationship or characteristics of a partner, and they don't want it and it keeps coming, there's an energy, there's something, they're attracting it. There's no doubt in my mind. That's just so clear when I see other people and myself in various times in my life. And even now, it's so interesting how things happen like that. When you focus with intention, energy follows intention. And sometimes when you're so on the train of no, rather than what you do want, it's being aware of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're putting out, what you're receiving, And it's in that awareness where you can shift. Once you're aware, you have the ability to shift.
Right.
Right. As children, that's, that doesn't happen. But it is birth to 7, or I'd say womb to 7, where your subconscious tape is basically recorded. And
so it's basically like a friend of mine, I told her that because she started a new relationship, things were going great, and I ended up speaking to the person she was dating, and I got more insight as to what was going on, and something clicked, and there was a behavior that she had displayed in a previous relationship. And speaking to the partner this time, I was like, you become your mother and you're also dating your mother. That is like the most interesting dynamic I have ever seen. And she sat there and she went, wow. Yeah. And I'm like, because that's what you grew up in. And now you're saying that from birth to 7 is where everything is practically pre-programmed. So there's that almost comfortable dysfunction that you get stuck in. And then you're trying to figure out, why does this keep happening to me? But it feels familiar. Right. So it's the point of where you, like you said, you have to build that awareness and step into that awareness and be like, this feels familiar, but it's not serving me.
Exactly.
So I need to let go of it and like maybe go in the opposite direction when I see it coming.
Yeah, and it takes time and all the different tools and maybe support, because on my other career now too is as a Reiki master. Yeah, but it's so clear when I see people in my practice and what shows up and what gets shared. Just it's all about what we've been talking about, so much of it. And those beliefs that are comfortable doesn't mean they're true, doesn't mean that they serve us well. And you've got to be willing to really deep get to the root. Right. And it could go back to the womb. Who knows? It very well could. I remember I had one of my students a long time ago, one of my doula students. And this is when I first was having some of those aha moments about what happens in the womb and remembrance from birth and all that stuff. So we were talking about some of that. It was kind of new on the radar in the 90s at that point, this whole discussion. And she said, I remember as a kid, she didn't like having her hair brushed, and like particular, like kind of like right here in her head. She didn't want to be touched there. She didn't want to brush or comb or nothing. She found out from her mom that she had one of those fetal monitors screwed into her scalp during her birth in that very spot. And hello, made sense to her, made sense to me with all the research that had been out to that point. And there's more now, but so yeah.
I've had one. I had one and I found out after that it screws in. I had no idea. That's when I checked my 4-year-old scalp when she was still small, and there was like the tiny little spot where it was. And I was like, if I knew, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
But now that explains why she doesn't like that part of her head pulled on too hard when I'm braiding her hair.
So yeah, that's just an example of the remembrance, but it's not a conscious remembrance. And when I go to talk about that birth to 7, there's another person I love to listen to. He's all over YouTube, and his name is Bruce Lipton. And he wrote The Biology of Belief, and he talks about this birth to 7 and that tape that we can make a new tape. We don't have to. Again, it's in that conscious awareness that we can shift off of something, because we're all running every day on 99% subconscious. We don't have to think about walking, moving, so many things we do all day, breathing. We don't have to think about any of it.
Right.
It's like autopilot.
Right. And I think that's important to make people understand the ability to be aware and to be fully present within themselves in order to make the changes that they say they want. A lot of people say they want different, but then they do the same thing, or they're afraid to make that change. Yeah.
There is fear. It's not easy to dig deep. It is not. It's not an easy road. I've, again, working with I mean, with doulas, I've done some of this work, but just so that, because I feel it's important that doulas go out into the world where they know themselves well and putting themselves in other families' homes and all the energetic dynamics that they do know this, and they know who they are, how they operate, from whence they come from, and all of that. And same in the Reiki practice, where it does take the deep dig to get to the root, because the work you're doing as a coach, right, for love and knowing why you're maybe not having that love relationship that you want, it's all about this, because everything out there is a reflection of you within. The outer world is really the inner world.
Yes.
And that's something that we get to really talk about more and more. I believe in today's world where there's so much healing that's needed right now. Not that there hasn't been before, but I feel like now more than ever. I don't know how you feel, but I think that.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Well, like you said, it's a reflection of what's going on internally. I'm bringing this in. Why am I bringing it in? How am I bringing it in? And how do I change that? Because at the end of the day, you can't control any of the external factors
Right.
around you.
Exactly.
You can control
Such freedom, so liberating. It's like, oh, phew. Okay, so let me just get a handle on this, you know. So, and a lot of it is just what goes on up here, right? The thought
Right.
we think, and what we tell ourselves, and how it's mostly BS, really.
Exactly. The down the birth canal game that you created.
Down the canal, yeah.
Yeah, down the canal. That was something that also brought awareness to people as well.
Yeah, so that was really, the whole goal for that was to, hey, you can be in your head well before the birth and learn about all these different things and what you could choose and not choose and what might happen if this and this, you know, all about postpartum and breastfeeding and birth, and a lot of questions to maybe think about more questions, or what you want to focus on, or that you didn't know certain things you might want to know more about. And then to put that all aside and get into the intuitive, which is what birth, of course, and parenting really is a lot about. There's so many books, there's so much support, there's my game, there's all of these teaching tools. And it's really about trusting your own inner wisdom, or even knowing that you have the inner wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awareness again, and not being afraid to embrace it and worry about what others think about what you've decided to do, or what you feel about it.
Right, because you know, there's so much out there when you're pregnant and when you become a mom, and same for doulas. There's just so much that you can absorb and take in, and then it's, what are you going to do with it? And you had asked earlier, why do I do what I do? I can't help it, I guess, is the answer to that one. But I feel like when we know things, we get to share that. And I feel like in life, that's what's important, to really make true connections from the heart space, which is all about relationships, right? And just, you know, be who we are and who we're meant to be. And there's going to be bumps, no doubt. And motherhood, fatherhood, it's definitely a wild ride. So strap in, sit down, strap in, and like, yeah. I mean, I have to laugh, but I'm on the other side of young ones. So who's ever listening, I don't mean to minimize anything you're going through, but I do want you to know that humor helps, no doubt, right? We don't always have to be so serious, but also if you are struggling in relationships and with love, yeah, you're going to have to really look within, as you are helping those people do, right?
So tagging on to that, what tips can you give for anyone trying to reframe not so positive experiences or examples they witnessed growing up, and trying to figure out if they'll ever have a fulfilling relationship? What tips can you offer for them to step into that awareness and not worry about what anyone is thinking?
I think whatever it takes practice. right? Nothing's overnight. There's no quick fix. So if someone tries to sell you this, I'm going to help you and fix you in 3 days, don't listen to them, you know? That's number one. So I think that the first thing is getting a handle on why you might, you know, think that you're having this struggle, or, you know, is it a worthiness conversation? Are you worthy of love? We're all worthy of love. And a lot of it does stem back to that. If there was some of that dysfunction or a relationship you witnessed that wasn't ideal, right, growing up, to really focus in on the fact that you are worthy, you're worthy of love, you're worthy of everything you say you want. And be a willing, committed human in the work of getting to know yourself. And if fears come up, to want to look at them and feel it, but also to work through that, and with the fear that it's a lesson. So everything's a lesson. And the more that you can practice the self-love, I mean, you can look in your mirror every day and say, I love you. You can practice the Ho'oponopono. You know about that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah, very powerful.
I know it when I play it, but
well,
like off the top of my head, I can only remember that it forgive me, I forgive you, I thank you, I love you. But the first one, I don't remember. But it's powerful. It's very powerful.
Yeah, sorry, everyone who's listening, but look it up, Ho'oponopono ritual. But that's a great one. So I think practicing self-love, rituals, mantras, simply doing something for yourself, by yourself, with yourself is also very powerful. Right? You had asked me what people can do, right?
Yes, just a couple of tips on how to, you know that there's hope on the other side of whatever they may be thinking or feeling.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not the same person I was, right? And I'm sure you're not, because as you learn and develop and practice these tools, journaling is a wonderful tool. I love journaling because you can get it all on paper and somehow get it out, whatever it is, you can just kind of get it out. And you can even have, if it's something like that you're angry about with yourself or whatever, you can even write it all out and then burn it. That's a cool ritual too. Just like watch it go up in flames, right? Yeah. Things I've done, still do some of these things for myself.
Oh, that dragon boat team that you're on, is that like the long, narrow boat, like when you watch rowing at the Olympics?
Yeah, so on another note, it is synchronized paddling. It's not, there's no rowing. So you're either on the right or the left, and you're in sync with your team. You have a steer, and we race. Sometimes we have a drummer in the drum seat. Yeah, it's great exercise. It's a great team sport. And I'll tell you what, that has built my confidence like nothing else.
So that could be another thing. Get into like
try something new.
A hobby, right? A
hobby with a team, or volunteer. Go out and get out of yourself and into somebody else. That's always great. But so the thing for me with the confidence is that, okay, first of all, it's learning a new skill, which is, right, you're just learning a whole new thing. And I've been willing to try different things. So I can also steer the boat, which there's only 3 people on the team that have dared say, I'll try it. And I can also, this is the best one, I hitch that thing up to my truck and I back that into the dock. So I can back the 30-something foot boat up with my truck. That was the most confidence boost.
I could imagine, because I don't like driving anything longer than a car.
Yeah. So seriously, try something new and be afraid and do it anyway. And ask for support too. I got coaching with all of it. So there's nothing wrong with having a coach, having a love coach, having a doula coach, having a Reiki coach, a mentor. There's nothing weak about reaching out for support.
Awesome. Well, this is something that I know you and I can go on for.
I know. I know.
So I'll just wrap it up here. And for anyone who's interested in getting in contact with Betty, I will have a link below that you can click on and you'll find out more information from there. So once again, thank you so much, Betsy. And
thank you.
I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Bye.